Hello, welcome back to another edition of The Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice, brought to you by Healthy Brands. Ryan, what is up? Happy Friday.
Hey, happy Friday. Doesn't feel like a Friday. I've been busy as heck.
I agree. It's been a whirlwind this week. So this week we're sticking on our topic about buying an agency and how all the things that are involved. And I think you got a great topic this week. Why don't we talk a little bit about what you're thinking?
Yeah, so we have covered like ways to buy an agency a couple episodes ago. We on the last episode we talked about the different types of buyers for marketing agencies that you run into.
Right.
Today I want to talk about I've got 7 ways to prepare to sell your marketing agency, 7 ways to prepare to sell. So there are hundreds of ways to prepare to sell your agency. So I had to really work hard at trying to come up with maybe the top 7 and try to fit them in one episode. So that's just going to be one of those where I'm cramming a lot in here. So get your popcorn ready.
All right, let's go.
All right. And I'm really dealing a lot in acquisitions right now. So I got a story for everything here. So
Awesome.
But let's start with number 1, and in no particular order on these, by the way, or hierarchy.
Cool.
They're all important. Number 1 is clean and clear financials in QuickBooks. So break that down for you. Clean means that when they look at the last 3 years of financials, so a buyer, has interest in an agency you're selling, right? So they submit for an NDA, they fill out the NDA, and then you send them basically their cash flow statement and the cash flow of the business. It's got the EBITDA, it's got the all the seller benefits, add backs. And so when you send that, you will also send usually the last 3 years tax returns so they can have evidence, back it up with actual supportive documentation, right? But then you get into sending them financials like P&Ls, balance sheets. And when you get into that side, they want 3 years in a row to look consistent in the way that you've done your financials, right? And so they can compare them from year to year if they want to. And it takes out a lot of time of them asking questions. And so clean and clear financials is really important. And I added this at the end in QuickBooks. Hey, QuickBooks, if you want to send me some money for promoting you, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
Right. I mean, we have a huge listenership now, and they really should be paying attention to us. And
I know.
We're really, by even saying this now, we're really saying to all you small businesses out there, you should be using QuickBooks. And whether you agree or disagree, doesn't matter. They are very common and easy for other people to get what they need from, obviously, like in this case, clean financials. So
yeah. Well, and so I bring this up because I have a lot of agencies that come to me and they either have their financials in like FreshBooks. I don't know if you've heard of that, or it's in a proprietary software, like an all-in-one agency software. It's some of the recurring revenue is done in Stripe, and that just dumps into one location in like QuickBooks or something else, but you can't segment where the services came from. That's not clean and clear, people. Like that is really confusing, and it makes people have to ask a ton of questions. So I always say, like, if you're in that ballpark, pay somebody to go through your financials and tell you what's clean and what's not, and fix it.
Yeah, in my consulting or small businesses that, my wife's also self-employed. So we have used QuickBooks, and one of the key things as you get bigger, like in an agency, is you kind of alluded to this, but being able to specifically say which revenue streams these pieces of revenue are coming from. So if you have reoccurring revenue, like say monthly for SEO retainers or social media retainers that are reoccurring, you want to say, this is my social media revenue, this is my SEO driven revenue, this is my web development revenue.
Exactly.
Right? So just so that just to your point, because an agency person on the other side of that who's evaluating an agency is going to say, and even if they're not, frankly, they're going to say, well, where is your revenue coming in from? Like what avenue is growing? And they'll want to look at trends and they want to say, oh, well, your social media has been doing this, but your SEO has been doing this,
Right.
and so it's a good way for them, just to your point. The real reason we want to talk about this is so that you can answer, so that you pre-answer a lot of questions
Yeah.
that drag this process out. And that's the
Yeah.
most frustrating thing for most people is it takes a long time to sell. And if you want to help, clear financials is like the number one thing you can do because it answers so many questions for people
Yeah.
ahead of time.
They're going to ask
100%.
all kinds of stuff. And you
Fuck
don't
yeah.
know what they're going to ask for. Somebody said, hey, Brian, can you just tell me all the reports they're going to ask for, and I'll just give them to you up front so we don't have to go through a lot of. And I'm like, that'd be great, except that you don't know
Yeah.
what somebody's going to be looking for to match their idea or their merging situation or their growth strategy.
Right.
The reason why they're buying, it's always different from buyer to buyer.
Right.
So
Right.
there's not, outside of the P&Ls and balance statements and clean books, you just got to have that ready and clean so that you're ready to download reports as needed. And by the way, just because you've downloaded reports from the time you go to sell your business on day one, doesn't mean that you're not going to need to redo it all in the next month or the next month. So that's why you don't want to go get ahead of yourself too much on this, because you could just be doing a lot of work up front and a lot of work continuously if you go to do too much. So number one's important because unfortunately, people are, when they're going to front a lot of money to buy your agency, they're going to ask a lot of questions, and they have the right to. They got risk involved in making an acquisition.
Yep.
They need to feel comfortable with it, and whatever they need to feel comfortable, you need to be prepared to give to them. So,
yeah, 100%.
All right, number 2 on my list is consistent and upward trending revenue, profits, clients. So you see how much I put into that one line. I packed it full just to get it in here. Like they're looking for consistent trends or upward trends, and whether it's consistency allows you to get a stable multiplier, usually around like three times or something in that ballpark. And then upward trend helps go above the three times multiplier. So they want to see that. If it's moving all around, that's going to take a lot longer to sell that agency because they're going to investigate the hell out of it, trying to figure out why it was all up and down. And then if it's sinking, most people won't buy it anyway, unless you're really just ready to sell it at, rock bottom, fire sale prices. If it's sinking, I tell people, hold on, go build it back for a couple of years if you can. If that's a possibility. I don't know what the situation is, right?
Yep.
But that consistency and the upward trends is, you better go ahead and suck it up and get ready to have a couple of good years and put everything you got into it before you put it on the market, if you can.
Yeah, I love this. There's so many reasons. I have actually a bunch of comments. I'm going to save one of them until we get a little bit further. But this one right here, to me, if you can deliver this list prior to even the one we just talked about, you really set people up. Really, I mean, if you want to, people talk all the time about negotiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to do well in your negotiation. Show that the three of these motherfuckers are all going up. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, people are like, "Oh shit! Like these guys are killing it."
There's nothing they can argue with. Like at that, like you can get into all the details of the financials you want. At the end of the day, it's all going up.
Right. The financials we just talked about. The only thing that can come out of those, if these three are trending up and you're really killing it, the only thing that can come out of those is that you spent a bunch of money on stupid shit, right? Yeah. So it would kill your margin. And because if these other three are going really well, people are already like, this is at least going to be a 3x situation. We know we're going to have to put some money into this thing to really, if we want to get it. But they're still like, look at all this opportunity. It's just going like this. What if it continues to go like that? Well, that's what they want. That's the whole point. If they're like, oh, especially if you can show like, oh, look at this year. We grew 25%. We grew 25%. We grew 25%. Oh, oh shit, these guys are going to grow 25%. Like you can start figuring the mechanism is going to
Right.
keep, historically keep going. So
It takes out that argument, Trice, of well, what happens if it doesn't grow? Well, when you've had 3 or 4 years of back-to-back
yeah,
20-30% growth,
yeah,
you can
yeah.
make that. It's hard to argue that it's not going to continue in that path.
Especially if you can show, oh, well, this year's on track to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So the answer is, well, what if it doesn't? Oh, well, if it doesn't, it's because you did something wrong. Because the way I'm running it right now says it's going like this, and
Mhm.
so you kind of put it back on them, and it's not going to be your fault.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Dead on.
I love this one because this is the new, this is the hammer. This is the thing that sells the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a way to get more money out of the agency and a way to get the agency sold both. It is clear as well. Now, I understand not everybody's in that situation. I get it.
100%.
I get it. And can you still sell your agency? Yes. Yes, you can. It just means you've got to be reasonable about the value.
Well, frankly, if you can
wavers, the less
show,
the value is.
yeah, if you can show revenue and profits grew, like it just circumstance, right? Hypothetical. If you can show revenue and profits grew, and um, even though maybe clients stayed the same or went down, well, now you've shown, oh wow, you've made a lot of really smart decisions. You must be doing something really right. We can really learn from that. So there's a way to still sell a lot of things, and just to your next couple points here, like depending on like what type of revenue streams you've got going on,
Right.
especially. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And which flows right into that next one. Number 3 is recurring revenue, right? Recurring revenue. So a lot of people say, well, we don't have a way to do recurring revenue. Well, okay, we'll create it. Like talk to an expert on it. Like you need to do it. Other people in your industry are doing it. There are plenty of ways to do it. Not everything has to be one-off custom, but understand this. The more something is one-off custom and not recurring revenue or something you can sell in a package or I'm talking about hosting. Like the more you don't set it up this way, the worse it is. If you have one-off custom everything, the buyer is going to run because here's what that requires. That requires expertise in understanding how to customize it and one-off selling of every single thing your agency does. And that is scary to buyers, and most of them run. So the more custom, everybody loves that word custom. We build custom websites. We do custom development. That's great. But when somebody goes to buy it, you might get a custom low price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the
recurring revenue is important.
Yeah, it doesn't go in your favor. It doesn't help your multiplier.
Yeah. Yes, it is a determinant that drives it down. You're right.
It can drive it down for sure. I think if I was you, and if let's just say hypothetically you are, a 90% custom kind of shop, what I would try to do is present reoccurring client base. Where you're like, oh,
right,
this percentage of my client base has made up
repeat
X percent of revenue these years, and we've had them, this percentage through this whole 3-year time period.
Right.
The bigger your reoccurring client base is, even if the number is not a reoccurring revenue, sort of, MRR or monthly, or ARR type of number, at least you can sell it in that way. And because you're like, this client base is extremely loyal. Here's what they're doing, with us over time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can, it's sellable. It still doesn't, out of the gate build your multiplier, but it does make it less of a question for them.
So. The higher the percentage of recurring revenue to your overall revenue, the higher the chance of selling and getting the price you want out of it.
Yeah,
I'll just say it's got a huge confidence factor for buyers.
100%.
So yeah, they love that recurring revenue.
Yep.
The next one is can be related in some ways. Number 4 is your client to revenue ratio. Let me example that. If you have 30 clients, but one of them makes up 25% of your revenue. Yeah. I call these anchor clients. They're anchor accounts. You do not want 1 to 4 anchor accounts in your portfolio of clients. It creates high risk because the next question that the buyer asks is, who holds the relationship with that account? They want to look at the history of that account, the business mix. and they look at it, and then what they find out is that that account almost always tied to the agency owner who's getting ready to exit the business after you leave. They hate
100%.
that scenario, and they do not like buying companies that have this scenario. So if you grew your agency on one main or two main accounts, get busy on adding some other accounts like them,
Yeah.
because you need a handful of them. You need 4 or 5 more to do that for them to feel confident.
Yep. I would, this is one of the ones I was holding off on when we were talking earlier about, growing client base and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be able to show them that your client base isn't tied to a very small number, and your revenue isn't tied to a very small number of clients. And I worked in an agency environment where 2 anchor accounts, it was let's call it a $2 to $5 million a year kind of revenue agency.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of those accounts were 60-70% of the revenue.
Wow.
And there was a third I would consider to be a third anchor, and it was 10% of the revenue. And so you're like, I need a 2 dozen $1,000 a month kind of clients, just to show I can balance this somehow. I've got something I can sell that doesn't rely, to exactly to your point, of these owners. We have said it in this show. I think we said it last time, and we've said it a million times when we've talked about sort of the relationship between agencies and CMOs. CMOs buy owners. That's why we really have an affinity to one group or another, is we really are like, this person really gets it. And we've talked about it before, like when the owner isn't involved in the day-to-day relationship,
Mm-hmm.
it creates a gap. And when you're selling, it's the same problem. It's reliant on you. And
this is why I'm big on working yourself. If you're an agency owner, working yourself out of a job as quickly as possible.
Yep.
We'll get there. We actually have this related
Mm-hmm.
on our list
Yep.
here, but I will tell you that some of the buyers that I deal with, they will take your top 1 or 2 accounts when they're doing their own valuation, regardless of what you valued it at. They will take the top 1 or 2 accounts if you have these anchor accounts, and they will take them out of the revenue when they decide what price they're going to offer to buy the agency for, because they assume it's going to go away, and they want to remove all the risk. And the way they can remove the risk is to remove that revenue when they're evaluating what they're going to pay for the agency. So that is really harsh. I don't agree with that 100%. I think there's a lot to do with buyer confidence about running an agency. You should have the confidence that you can take an account, make them happy, and increase it even. But not everybody has that. So I just want to prepare agency owners that this is the reality. Sometimes when you have anchor accounts, you're creating this scenario that this might happen.
Yeah, I think all the other stuff we've talked about so far is driving toward the strength of a multiplier, right? It's your financials one way or the other, your mix of things one way or the other influence that initial sort of gut instinct on what a multiplier looks like. But you're right. This question really pertains not so much to the multiplier, but to the overall offer. Because I think a naive buyer would say, I'm really buying the agency for these anchor clients because I think I'm going to bring them into the mix immediately. They're probably very high margin people. They're going to mix in with what I'm going to cross sell to them, blah, blah, blah. But the truth of the matter is, this is an 80-20 rule. You're going to lose a chunk of business right out of the gate just because your mixture may have changed, or I think what this impacts is the type of deal you get, not necessarily the multiplier, but the type of deal. Meaning,
I agree with that.
We want this owner to stay involved for a lot longer than we traditionally would have, because we're at risk for losing these anchors, and we need a year or 2 or 3 of at least a face in this organization, and being able to build up MRR and ARR to balance out, because we know we're going to lose them eventually. And so it's the type of deal per se versus the multiplier itself.
Dead on. Yeah. I don't, this isn't something I factor in when it comes to multiplier, unless that anchor account is like more than 25%. Like they're like it, like if 50%, like to me, that's I'm not sure if I would even go to sell that agency, to be honest, if it was that high. I don't think I would even take on, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time as a broker to sell an agency. Like you have a lot of hours involved in prep and actually doing it, working with potential buyers. Like I don't think I would waste my time, to be honest. So I'm just, if you're an agency owner hearing this, that tells you how serious I am about what the effects it has on the value, and the value is what the market will bear.
Yeah, I
What the
think
market will pay for it.
yeah, and I think you see a lot of stuff now where, let's say the agency is a smaller physical size. It's a handful of employees versus 25, right?
Mhm.
Well, uh, those kind of groups, the owners really are trying to get completely out. They that's the whole point. And whereas the people who've been in with 25 employees and they've been in it for a really, really long time, they understand that this relationship piece, they've already worked through it in a lot of ways, and they understand that you really are going to want that. And seller financing comes in maybe more so in that kind of situation versus, I'm 5 people, everybody works from home, it's all online, it's all MRR driven. Well, there's no relationship, there's very little relationship there, and it's more about constantly driving performance. And so that kind of owner is like, hey, I want out as fast as possible. And so this kind of a deal doesn't, let's say they have an anchor account instead of a whole bunch. Well, that kind of deal doesn't work for them. And
Mhm.
so you're right. Like depending on that mix for you as a broker, it really does influence how hard you got to work.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, Number 5, good leadership and processes in place. I did another combo line, didn't I? I,
yeah.
I had to bunch it in there because both need to be in place. Leadership for departments or over people means their people won't jump ship very easily. Like leadership, so that it allows the owner to step in and not have to drive every piece of the business immediately. Like, and they've got people that will help them, support them to do that. And so that's a really important thing. And one of the questions I get asked mostly by buyers is like, okay, talk to me about the leadership in place. And processes is good leadership does usually ensure that you have written processes in place to do the work so everybody knows how this goes, from
Yeah.
everything from selling something to onboarding the clients to doing the monthly services or doing the projects, and then like reporting on the results of those things. Processes are important. Now, does everybody ask me about processes? No. Should they? Yes, they absolutely should.
Mhm.
Because written processes and agencies, in my eyes, are really important,
Yeah,
and
this is a
they
hot button
are
for you.
the how-to guide of running that agency.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew this was a hot button for you. And while I hate talking about processes,
Yeah.
right? It's not in my nature, but leadership 100% is. And if I was looking at, if I was a CMO taking on a new role, right?
Mhm.
This is everything I'm asking about is start right here. As a buyer of an agency, this to me answers a big question for me as the buyer about how hands-on do I have to be? If this is a great team that can sell this business, that has the processes, and to your point, can keep their team together, then I've got a much smaller group of people that I have to influence about how good this is going to go in the transition
Mhm.
and why they should stay on and what we can do together and what I bring to the table. And getting to know them. And to be honest, I 100% would never buy anybody that doesn't have a group of people that can run this. Maybe because I'm looking to be more passive, as a person.
Yeah.
But whether I am or not, this is a group that really, really helps me a lot.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, important that they will stand by you, that you like them, they like you. All those things are
100%.
important. There is
Yeah.
that point where you don't most of the time you don't get to meet this leadership team because they aren't aware that you're even selling the agency.
Yep.
And
And if
so
you
this
do,
is
man, you're lucky. I mean, I think it tells you everything.
yeah.
And next to financials and really, really good financial situations, or at least clarity, this is the most important thing to me.
The next one to me is one of the most important. The next one, it's tied to it because you're talking about an owner like requirements of the owner, right? The next one, number 6 on my list is owner involvement. And so I want to paint this picture on the owner involvement. There's a sliding scale on this. Like on one side of the scale is the owner is they have a strong role of doing something in the agency. Usually it's multiple things, but their core role is sales and or account management or strategy or something along those lines. I mean, I've seen all kinds of situations here where they have different roles in the agency, but you're working in the agency. You may be working on the agency a little bit, but you're working in the agency. Like when you leave, they have to replace your role, period. And so the buyer, the scale, let me just finish the scale. The scale is that on the other side of the scale is completely passive income. Somebody else is running the agency. You might be off running another business, or you might just be golfing and boating, and you check in every once in a while, or you have like once a week leadership meeting. But it's passive income. So, and what I run into is everything across that scale. The more that it is on the side of owner occupied working in the business, like the more it is, the harder it is to sell. This is why I'm such a proponent of work yourself out of a job. If you have an agency for 20 years and you're still doing a major role in the agency, you're failing yourself, your agency, your clients, you're failing everybody, maybe your family at home. You have to get the hell out of that role. And if you love doing it, great. Okay. Then hire somebody to run the agency. If you want to be an SEO guy, or you want to be, a consultant or strategist, right?
Yeah.
This is I know agency owners, when you hear this, you're ready to argue with me on this. I get it. I get it. Argue away. But buyers, you cannot argue that buyers do not want to buy a job. They want to buy a company. And the more you can sell them a company that's set up and ready to go without them having to dive in and pick up the hammer and start working, the easier it is to sell it.
Yeah. You think about the buyer groups that we talked about last time. There are only 2 in that mix that could jump in and do some piece. And those are marketers who want to buy agencies and former agency owners who've got something else, right? Everyone else is an entrepreneur or a VC or private equity or whatever they are, right? They don't have any business being in the business, right? They are either just solely CEO and running, looking at financial pieces, or, leadership team activities, and that's it. And so
I would say 10 to 20%. 10 to 20% is what I have in my head of potential buyers that would buy something if they had to step into a role in the company.
So if I look at it the same way, like if any of those people look, right, it is they may lose interest in buying your agency right here, because they're like, they know that they don't have anyone, or that they're going to have to hire someone to run the business, right? Which is going to hurt their margin right off the bat. And so they're like, well, now I got to figure that in. So
and then they can't service the debt. They can't pay back the loan because they have 100%. Added costs, not efficiency.
Right. The growth or the profit would have to be huge for them to say, oh, I'm willing to carve out some 6-figure number to somebody to run this business. And they're very unlikely to do it. So, and then of the 2 who could, right, I just exactly to your point, they're very unlikely to buy a job. And if they are, they're not going to pay a premium for it. And because they're like, now I got to work hard. This is a negotiating tactic, right? This is part of the thing. If you're super immersed in the business and you're running the day-to-day, especially if those client relationships are relying on you, hey, guess what? One, you're going to be in this, you as a seller are going to be in this mix for a while. And 2, which is not good for me as the buyer in a lot of ways, to be honest. And two, I'm not paying a premium for that. You just 2x, and like you went from 2x to 3x. If you missed a couple of these, you went from 2x to 3x like that fast.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And if it gets any worse, frankly, I'm out.
Yeah.
Because
this scenario right here, like you were saying when you first started talking about this topic, with this scenario determines to me, out of those 6 buyer types, do I have 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 6? Like, how many of those buyer types are available in your specific situation to acquire this? And really only one, because you mentioned the current agency owner. The current agency owner doesn't want to take on they want the clients and the revenue, but they don't want to take on a role that's in that agency. They already have a role. They don't want to do that.
If they already own an agency, they're bringing their people in. And they're going to be like, I'm willing to buy. The only reason they're willing to buy is because their team is going to run your team. And this part tells the truth of whether that's going to happen or not to them. And because they're like, hey, look, if you have a group and this guy's not involved, but this group is running it, then I don't feel like I have to do that merger, and I don't feel like I have to be in that business. So those two together really, I mean, it will tell you what type and person they are, and it'll help answer the question for them of how much am I going to have to do. So you're right. This is an really important one.
Yeah. Well, the last one, number 7, is that you have ideas for growth. There are opportunities for growth. You may even have a strategy baked up for them, but having a bullet point list of ways to grow it past where it's at is extremely important, because the buyer may not actually have, they may not have this, these ideas in their head. They may not have the creative mind to solve that, or to like insert, and fill in the blanks here with ways to grow it. Most of the time, the person who is best suited to tell you how to grow that agency is the current agency owner, who has said, if I only have more time, if I only have more money, if I could just focus on this. And they already have a good idea of how they would do it. They just haven't done it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I keep going back, I know, to like a reference to your negotiation. I think if you're looking at how you could grow, and you're not looking for investment from someone so that you can do that, but you're looking to literally sell outright, this is a great tactic for really insulating the business in a lot of ways to where it could be, and telling a great story. I think what could also be really powerful is, in the circumstance where it is another agency owner that's going to buy, right? It's the story of how your products, services, industry you offer, you target, whatever, partner well with what they're doing. So a lot of research on who they are, frankly, is really worth your weight in gold. So to your point, like traditional business, right? It's, you grow by either offering more, or deeper, getting better at what you do, or, in the same line. So you can apply that in a lot of different ways. The industries, the products and services you offer, whatever it is. So I think you should have, as part of your, sort of, quite honestly, your business plan for exiting the business is a really good story of how this business is on the brink of some amazing thing with just the right kind of buyer.
Right. Yeah.
It's good marketing.
I mean, it is. And, you never want to oversell anything, but having realistic things in here, like that would be like, somebody coming in with money can make a lot of these things happen, actually. So if they have the extra dollars to implement and do it, and sometimes that means they need to hire somebody for these special projects, or to do an initiative, and they're willing to do that because they also see that opportunity, and that's how they're going to get their ROI. That's how they're going to turn their investment into a real cash cow. And so I do love that number 7. I think it's important, as a lot of buyers want to focus real heavily, in the accounting side and the financial side of these acquisitions. I think the biggest mistake I see buyers doing is they don't spend nearly enough of their brain power on the what if, the next steps, what the agency looks like at the next level, because sometimes the next level is just a few months away if they do a few adjustments. And now, instead of having a cash flow of 500 or 500,000 or $1 million, now it's 1.5 to 2 million. And so I think people need to be a little bit more forward thinking in their acquisitions, and have a little bit more confidence, honestly, in themselves and what they can do. I mean, if they don't have it, they shouldn't buy it, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, this is where opportunity is. If you're really good at business growth, there are all kinds of opportunities out there for you to make money all over the place in the agency world.
Yeah, I think, you're, like we talked about last time, your ideal buyer is someone that already owns an agency, because they understand the culture and the mechanisms and all the client relationships and all those kinds of things. This last one, ideas for growth, has actually the most impact on them, because this is really a great opportunity for you to influence the opportunity for them, because that's the real story. I mean, otherwise there's no interest. This is how you get your multiplier at 3x or more. You have all those great financials, and let's say you nailed all that stuff. This is the story of what that opportunity really is, and why your multiplier should be 3 or more.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like I said, on the buying side, I would love for most buyers to spend more time in the growth strategy, but you'll hear people say that when you make an acquisition, you better damn well have a growth strategy ready. It shouldn't be the scenario where I'm going to go into the business, I'm not going to make any changes, I'm going to look at it for 3 to 6 months or a year, and I'm just going to coast with what it is before I make any adjustments and changes. That's a weak mindset. That's a mindset of, I'm going to let this thing coast, and maybe it's going to go downhill a little bit while you do that, versus coming in and saying, I have a growth strategy to take my investment and do something with it. And by the way, the people in the agency will love that. The people, even the current owners, will love seeing something happen with their agency. They do like to see it go upwards and succeed and thrive. So it creates excitement and energy, and your culture starts to thrive when you come in and you go forward. You don't just stay stale.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying completely, and this is in what I've seen out there. This is the biggest debatable topic. What's your mindset going into it should be? Should I learn the business, or and sort of try to understand it and not change anything? Because change, if they're already fearful, and then maybe they're going to leave because I just opened this to can of worms. Versus, to your point, having a plan. And like any plan, right? You can go into it with great ideas and a great plan of where you think this can go, and be flexible with the business, because it's going to look different than what you really think it is. But I think the key is, with what you said, is if your mindset is enthusiasm and growth and change and opportunity, and you can convince people to stay based on that, and double down and drink the Kool-Aid and love that you're in the mix. Doesn't mean you have to pull the trigger on all of that stuff, but you definitely have to be thinking in that way, so that the people who are there say, oh shit, this new person is really going to do a lot for our business, and really sounds like they're going to help me grow in my career. And so why shouldn't I stick around? There's a lot of opportunity for me personally. So yes, I agree.
Yeah. So I would love to spend time on this, like, post acquisition strategy, change, when you make change, all those stuff. That's almost its own podcast episode that we can look at down the road. But having the ideas for growth is what you can do as the agency owner. Of here's the ways I would grow that. Maybe write it out, bullet points or paragraphs, and have that kind of ready to go. And by the way, if you are in a situation where you're taking this list and you're going to work on it for a year or two before you sell. Great idea, by the way, because you can really start increasing the value and get more money out of it. But this idea for growth, make that list now, and then actually start doing some of those things now. Get after it. Why are you waiting? You already know there are good ways to grow your agency. Why would you wait? Why would you wait to do that stuff like that? That is something that I say. You need to carve out the time. You need to involve your team in helping you do those things. Don't try to do that alone, and go do some of those things. You already know good and well it's the right answers. So I just see some procrastination happening those last few years before they go to sell, and it's like, don't do that to yourself. You're going to hurt yourself. And if you can show them you've already started that track and what's doing on the bottom line, your buyers get really excited about that. You just started a journey that they can finish, and that shows a lot of profits on the bottom line. They're really pumped up about buying your agency.
Yeah, it's all about positioning yourself for the future, right? And that's how you do it. And they will see that. That helps the multiplier get better because they're buying opportunity, like I just said a second ago. And if you wait, then you're not really selling your business at its peak. And that's what you want. You want to sell it at its peak. It's when it's most valuable to somebody else. So don't wait.
Yep. Well, that's it. That's the 7 ways to prepare to sell your agency.
Love it.
Reach out to me if you have any questions. You might, after hearing this, you might want to debate one of these topics, like you said, Trice.
Comment below and argue with us.
Yeah,
please.
Argue with me. Go ahead.
Please tell us we've left something off that's really valuable.
Yeah, start the conversation, and please subscribe so that you can get all the great episodes we do. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. So thank you.